So we move on to section 2's characters. We look at Candy. So the first thing we find out about Candy is that he's disabled. He's got this round stick-like wrist, and basically that kind of sets us up for knowing a little bit about what the lives of disabled people were like in this time. And he's got a menial job because he lost his hand on this ranch, and basically they just kind of look after him like just to have a goodwill gesture, which is quite interesting. But also that he's kind of disabled and also coming to the end of his time, and he's not as much use as he should be or could be, much in the same way as his dog is. And so obviously they had that link, and maybe that's a part of the connection that they actually have. But it also kind of gives us an idea of why he's so keen on the dream later on, because he knows he's going to be dealt with in just the same way that his dog is, as we're going to find out in the next section. He's the old swamper in the place. It basically means that he mops and sweeps the bunkhouse where the other people stay, and that's also why he introduces George and Lenny to the room. He's got a little bit of insight and obviously knowledge, obviously from all his years and experience. And when George actually asks him why the guy in the bed before him left, he says why he just quit, the way a guy will. And that's really interesting because it sums up the situation of a lot of itinerant workers at the time. They'll just move on and they'll just quit. Maybe something will get in their head, or maybe something just they won't like it one day and they'll just go. So there's no kind of loyalty or community or deep-seated need for each other. People just come and go. And he shows his knowledge again when he actually talks about Curly, and he's actually saying that he's a lightweight and he's handy, so he knows what Curly's about. And also this kind of gives an introduction to Curly, showing us that there's something negative to come from him. When he actually discusses with George, and he gets George to actually say that he doesn't really like George to say that he doesn't like Curly, we're told that the old man's reassured. So this is kind of showing that he's looking for someone to talk to, some kind of solace, someone that he can actually share conversation with. And maybe he's hoping here that he's reassured in that he can trust George and Lenny, which actually allows us to believe that he would listen to their dream and actually think that it was a reality in some way. And also the most important reference obviously is when Carlson says why don't you get Candy to shoot his old dog. And that's really important because obviously it's an echo of Candy should have responsibility to put the old dog out of his misery, which is an echo of what happens at the end of the book, because George has to kill Lenny. And obviously the idea here, Candy should be the one to do it. And we know this is the right thing for him to do simply because, well, at least in the terms of the book, we know it's the right thing for him to do because Slim has agreed on it. And obviously Slim is, set up as perfect throughout the book. So if Slim agrees with this, then it's a good idea. But obviously he doesn't do it, obviously later on we're going to see that as well. But it's important that this is the kind of first mention, Carlson just says, Candy should shoot his dog. And that's important because Candy can't do it, couldn't do it. And again, it just shows that's all. It just emphasizes that the dog is all he has left. And obviously this is the kind of the first idea, one of the first ideas that we get in the novella of being cruel to be kind, doing something that would be a bit abhorrent for the good of what's to come. So we move on then to Crooks, and looking at Crooks, it's quite sad that the first thing we hear of him, apart from, and I haven't taken the quotation from it just because it's not commonly used, is when they play a trick on him. But here, when when Candy's actually talking about when the boss loses his temper, he just gives the stable buck hell. George obviously shows straight away he doesn't understand. He says, well, why give the stable buck hell? Give the stable buck hell the question mark. And obviously the explanation, unfortunately, is because you see the stable buck is a nigger, and that is kind of summing up his place on the ranch. And then is just the George just replies, nigger, huh? And again, that's just kind of the reference. So no longer is he the stable buck. It's kind of just referenced that way. So obviously, it's kind of like a summation, knowing that this person at this time is, because of their colour, the bottom of the hierarchy in this ranch. And then he actually quantifies, that he's actually a nice fella, which shows something, I guess, a bit about Candy as well. But it also shows that maybe Crooks, from the way he comes across for a lot of the book, is a little bit misunderstood, and maybe in not just having short, quick dealings with him, but having longer dealings with him over time, like Candy has. Candy's in a position to be able to say that he is a nice fella. he's got a crooked back where a horse kicked him. Obviously just kind of denoting why he's called Crooks. Obviously he's got a crooked back, and obviously how he got that. And obviously he mentions kind of like the other oddities about him. He scores obviously, so this is kind of a unique kind of a unique selling point, sorry, a unique thing about him, but also the fact he reads a lot, and he's got books in his room, which again kind of makes him stand out. So he's got all these things that kind of make him stand out. He's got obviously this disability, which isn't like the majority of guys, even though obviously it's like Candy, the fact that he is black, and the fact that he's got books in his room and he reads a lot. So all the things that Candy mentions about him, Candy's actually saying them that they are things that differentiate him from the others on the ranch. And then when we get sorry, this should be a little earlier on. I'm just going to move it up. When we get this earlier here, we've got the first description that we have of his. We're going back now. Apologies. Going back to Candy's dog, we hear the dog is described as drag-footed sheepdog, grey of muzzle with pale, blind old eyes. The dog struggled lamely. So that lameness again there is echoed. Apologies for having to move that across and for not having planned it a little better. Forgive me. And then. Yeah, we'll stop on that. There's only one thing that comes up from Crooks on section 2, section 3, and I'll mention that now because there's only one thing, so I'm not going to do a whole video on just one thing. So basically, when he actually comes into the bunkhouse, to actually talk to the people there, he just informs Slim that the tar is ready, and he says, "I warmed it up like you asked, sir." And that's important because basically it just shows that his position of servitude on the ranch, and even though Slim treats him completely cordially and politely, it's just showing that he's not actually invited into the bunkhouse. He's the only person who's just has to come in and then just do his servant role and then leave again, which is obviously an echo of how black people were treated at the time.